Good evening, and welcome to the 2024 Emerging Voices Fellowship Final Reading. My name is T.C. Mann, and I'm the Program Coordinator of Literary Programs and Emerging Voices at PEN America, with support from Cleyvis Sharif, Chief Programming Officer of Literary Programs. It has been a pleasure to work with this year's group of Emerging Voices Fellows. The Emerging Voices Fellowship provides a 5-month immersive mentorship program for early career writers from communities that have been traditionally underrepresented in the publishing world. Through curated one-on-one mentorship and introductions to editors, agents, and publishers, in addition to workshops on editing, marketing, and creating a platform, the 5-month fellowship nurtures a creative community, provides a professional skill set, and demystifies the path to publication, with the ultimate goal of diversifying the publishing and media industries. Tonight, you will hear from 11 fellows selected from across the country whose work explores issues and ideas including disability, gender, belonging, shaped in time, visits from their past, the unknown, and coming to age, among others. You will also hear from their selfless, insightful, and giving mentors who will introduce their mentees this evening. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Yvonne and Michael Marsh Family Foundation, whose generosity helps make this program possible. We also would like to thank the Emerging Voices Alumni Community and Advisory Board, PEN America staff, and the 2024 readers, final judges, mentors, workshop instructors, and visiting publishing professionals who contributed to this year's fellowship. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's show. I know you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Keetji Kuipers, editor of Poetry Northwest and author of 4 books of poems, including the forthcoming Lonely Women Make Good Lovers. And today, I am one proud mama bear to be introducing my fellowship mentee, Magdalena Arias Vásquez. Before first meeting with Magdalena, I Googled her, as one does. The poems I found online were excellent, but I also noted from her bio that she was not yet long out of undergrad, and so imagined that she was likely just beginning to find her voice, a word which I think of in poetry speak as shorthand for one's power. Boy, was I wrong. It is rare to meet a young writer, still early on their path as a poet, who is as directed and intentional in the pursuit of their art as Magdalena. As she described to me in our very first meeting, she is interested in exploring what it means to be sovereign, both as an individual and a nation, and the conceptual question of ruling one's emotions, just as, in some cultures, there exists a seemingly innate desire to rule the land and each other's bodies on it. In her writing, she unpacks exile and trespass, as well as how to make a home in a world whose borders feel false, contrived, nothing more than a shifting human mirage. As she writes, I drill these words onto my body, which is the only nation I know. Her poetry does not collude with any global view that is less than fully broken open. Instead, hers is an expansive poetry that redefines even as it blurs definition. From our conversations about these themes to discussions of the role of translation and the spaciousness and possibility offered by a poetry that embraces multilingualism, I am grateful for these months we've had together. As Magdalena herself has written, I wanted to be possessed, not haunted. Her poems, of course, do both.
My name is Magdalena Arias Vásquez, and I'm a writer from Panama, currently based in New York. Today I'll be reading 2 poems from my poetry manuscript, which questions how narratives of history and collective memory in Latin America shape the narratives that we construct about ourselves. The first poem I'll be reading is called Code of Love in Newborn Nations. Code of Love in Newborn Nations. 0. Stories of death are always verbal. 1. In March, the guayacan trees cry yellow and greet death like an old friend. 0. I think that to feel pain is to fold into myself. 1. There are 2 types of wounds, the written and the topographical. 0. When you grow up in a nation that has been wounded down the middle so that the world can be connected, you learn, 1. That self-mutilation is an act of love. 0. I use metaphors to write about people I've loved so I do not have to cross rivers. 1. My mother tells the stories from the time of the dictatorship over and over again. 1. 34 years ago, my grandfather crossed a city on fire so my mother could join them for Christmas. 0. When I fall in love for the first time, I walk barefoot on yellowed grass during the dry season, waiting for showers. 0. How do you reconquer your own heart? 1. At times, my chest is a lit-up storefront in the corner of Avenida Central. It used to be kept open through the night. 0. Even when it burns, you can learn to eat light. 1. You can learn to engulf completely. 0. I think that love and grief are synonyms. 1. Maybe we are only sovereign in the memory of rain, water, or fire in the heart of the country. 0. The biggest wound is the one of ownership. 1. On my wall, a forgotten sticky note reminds me I am no one's. 0. As a child, I believed in benevolent ghosts. 1. I wanted to be possessed, not haunted. I'll also be reading another poem today. It's called Event Horizon. The poem's title comes from astrophysics, and Event Horizon is the point of no return of a black hole. Event Horizon. There are versions of myself where I wear my mother's countenance, freckled night sky, a man once called Andromeda. I linger in cracked reflections and the mathematics of guilt, apologies with word counts typed on spider web screens, endings with the rusted skin of once wet machines. In rooms below zero, I imagine my father's voice, bite my lips raw, howl at the moon's shadow, pretending darkness is a face and silence is the language of love. Men with wing shoes blow goodbyes like dandelions. There are walls, there are limits, there are light-studded cities. My scrawl along the curves of discarded souls. You can see the universe in his eye, attraction, a mirror. There are asymptotes. Thank you so much. Those are all the poems I'll be reading today.
Hello, my name is Cleyvis Natera, and I'm the author of the debut novel Neruda on the Park and the forthcoming novel The Grand Paloma Resort. It is my pleasure to introduce the brilliantly talented Jemila Pratt. Since this past summer, I have grown to know Jemila both through her written work and through the conversations we have each month. I have been blown away by Jemila's perseverance, resiliency, and talent. As a teacher who has dedicated many years to working with young people, Jemila's love and care for this population is palpable. This demanding job has afforded her the ability to understand the critical truths about bearing witness to what it means to come of age as a young Black girl in this country. Her forthcoming YA novel is about Gita, a sophomore in high school who is navigating the many social pressures of growing up too fast and the dangers of trusting the wrong people. In Jemila's prose, we find an electricity, a charge that provides to us rare insights about this young girl whose unique outlook on the world makes her a marvel to follow. Gita's interior life is rich with humor and biting social criticism, while her exterior life shows us her vulnerability and innocence. As the novel progresses into groundbreaking territory for a YA book, Gita forces us to confront the many ways in which this country continues to fail young Black people. Gita's is also a story of strength. It provides a map for young people to understand the way one may find a path to healing after suffering great trauma. Jemila has done an outstanding job, and I, for one, cannot wait to hold this book in my hand.
Hi, I'm Jemila Pratt, and I'll be reading Michael and Glenn, a chapter from my novel. All morning I've been thinking about Glenn and me going to Lucky Boy for some chili cheese fries or somewhere else to eat as long as it's not home. Every damn class dragged today, maybe because I just kept looking at the clock instead of concentrating on my work. The lunch bell couldn't ring fast enough for me to get out of health class, And when that auto system calls the house later tonight to say that I was absent from 5th period, I'll be waiting to hang up just as soon as I hear it. Shanice decided to wait with me near the main office. We didn't get a chance to say much since Glenn pulled up a few moments later and parked in front of the flagpole. She and I both noticed that Glenn wasn't driving. Instead, it was his friend, nerdy-ass Michael Scott. He's one of those people that can't get rid of their nerdy look, even without wearing glasses. His style is super preppy, which doesn't help at all. Michael could be an almost slightly better version of Paul from the Wonder Years. He's the opposite of Glenn in height, coolness, and definitely looks, but they seem to be best friends. Glenn got out of the car when he didn't see me. Before I could turn to Shanice to say bye, she told me not to leave. Gee, I don't think you should go. Shanice blurts it out like she had been holding in a big secret all week. What? Even you were saying how excited you were that Glenn was coming to pick me up. Exactly. I said I was excited that Glenn was picking you up, not Glenn and a friend. Girl, it's cool. I almost dropped my new Dr. Pepper chapstick. I don't know. Glenn and Michael are boys, so they're always together. I bet Michael's just gonna give us a ride. All right. Shanice's voice goes up when she says it, half trusting the idea of me still leaving. It's cool, I promise. We're probably going to get some food, and I gotta get home and change into that funky-ass uniform. I really don't have all that much time to be with Glenn because I have to start my shift on time. Okay, maybe you're right. Just call me before you go to work then. She eyed the boys as she said it like she's taking in some detailed information for a police report. All right then, see ya. Yeah, bye. I waved to Shanice and called over to Glenn. He walked up and gave me a really nice hug before helping me take off my backpack before we got in the car. Looking at his deep brown eyes and smooth dark skin feels like I want to stay lost. Without turning around, I feel we were being watched because Glenn always attracts attention being 6'5". A few girls continued staring at us as the car turned around and we started going up the street. Glenn reintroduced me to Michael by the time we reached the stoplight. He turned his head and flashed a smile. Just as soon as I could make out the Sizzler sign, we passed it. We kept coasting through a few more lights on Arroyo Parkway. With the windows down, I could smell the pickled veggies and peppers, pastrami, and french fry grease from Lucky Boy. The combination of smells and my imagination made my stomach gurgle as loud as an overstuffed garbage disposal. But we didn't stop there either, and Michael drove us to Glenn's house.
Hi there, it's Stephanie Burt, and I would like to be sure that you pay attention to the really terrific up-and-coming poet, Cyrana Martin, who combines an awareness of trans embodiment and trans-specific dilemmas with a sense of the romantic, the chthonic, the spiritual, the unknowable that she shares with William Blake, with Dylan Thomas, and with the great and righteously angry David Wojnarowicz, probably the biggest single influence on the prose poems that represent some of what she's been writing lately. Cyrana has been able to bring religious and anti-religious traditions, a sense of the sacred and the paradoxically blasphemous, and a sense of the needs and wants of our own trans bodies into prose and verse distinguished for its compactness and for its reach, for its extravagance and its trim, for the way that it shows how the divine may be in all of us and may be denied every day by the practices that keep us from being ourselves. I cannot recommend enough that you check out the sequences of prose and the ambitious, long-lined odes and introspections that she has just brought into the world. I have loved seeing where they're going. I see them between walls and open to the night sky, and I want to see where they're going to go next. I hope you will too.
Hi, my name's Cyrana, and I'm going to be reading a poem called Jacob Elordi, named after the actor. I'm told that my resemblance to Jacob Elordi is remarkable. Tall, dark, and handsome, I stand a solid 6'5". My nose is perfectly aquiline, and I have deep crevices carved across my back like the rainy landscape of a mountain range. My 5 o'clock shadow appears by 11, and I have at least many tens of thousands of women willing to sleep with me at any time. More than anything, I'm told that this handsome, boyish charm is my greatest resemblance. Because like Jacob Elordi, I am the greatest actor. And I can make you believe that I'm American when really I'm something so much worse to you. And I can make you believe that I'm not in love when really I spend all day thinking about your touch. And like Jacob Elordi, I can make myself believe this even more than you do. It's like how they say that all the great male actors have the most fragile egos. That by playing someone who is so suave and so handsome, so villainous and cruel and kind, by playing someone whose essence will ultimately subsume me and inevitably fashion me into a star, like every great male actor, I will lose myself in the brightness of my own flame. I will become something even less than the shadows which trail what will eventually become my corpse. Like Jacob Elordi, I am always invisible, only ever a mask which, however beautiful, however enrapturing it may be, only conceals the soul of a small boy desperate to be someone else. Like Jacob Elordi, I am still a teenage boy watching my prom date get swept away by someone else. Like Jacob Elordi, I am still afraid of shaving, and I wear aftershave to pretend that I've cut myself into a real man like my dad. Like Jacob Elordi, I am sleeping with the most beautiful women I can just to prove that I can. And like Jacob Elordi, I am sucking dicks to show that I know better than this. Like Jacob Elordi, I will leave myself in the shower drain for you, knowing that I have left only dirt and bile on the tiles. Like Jacob Elordi, you will eat this and convince yourself that it's something from a dream, that you can take your desires and strip them of their spices, that you can remove the too hot tang of something unknown, the bleeding flesh of the meat which you keep just simmering on the grill. Like Jacob Elordi, I will know that I am nothing more than this meat, that everything that you think I am is just the breath which will eventually leave my corpse at rest. And like Jacob Elordi, I will know that no matter how many of my names you think you know me by, no matter how many times you see me smile with the kindest eyes, like Jacob Elordi, I will know that I am only ever slipping my soul through a straw to you. And like Jacob Elordi, I will ask you to watch as I flash across a silver screen, a landscape large as the mountains, the scene cut short from everything.
My name is Katherine Standefer, and it's my pleasure to introduce emerging writer Gabb Schivone. Gabb's is a voice we haven't heard before. Gabb is the mass shooter who could have been, but wasn't. Their investigative memoir, In Progress, Army Boy blends an examination of mass shooters with their own startling personal experiences inside military and gun culture. In Gabb's work, we walk the uneasy line between a venerated military and the frustrated men who want to serve but find themselves rejected. We hear the stories, surprisingly common, of mass shooters with military backgrounds, and we see Gabb interrogate how things like gender, orientation, and previous victimization played a role in their own decisions to commit violence, or not. Gabb cut their teeth blogging for Huffington Post and writing for Student Nation, an online project of The Nation magazine, and now publishes in the likes of Slate, Baffler, and The New Republic. Gabb has netted grants and fellowships from the Center for Independent Journalism, the Fund for Investigative Journalism, the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, and many more. In the initial pages of Army Boy, Gabb holds readers in tense, pregnant moments. Their descriptions are both fresh and chilling, requiring readers to feel the power and satisfaction that can come from holding and using a gun. But the work is remarkable not only for its first-person perspective, but for its use of research in lively and compelling ways, the result of Gabb's more than a decade as a reporter and their characteristic willingness to question institutions and challenge agreed-upon narratives. As a journalist, you're trained to take yourself out of the story, Gabb wrote in a recent grant proposal. But the more I tried to separate my life from the lives of the shooters, the more intense the two chewed and clawed and clashed inside me. Here's Gabb to share more of Army Boy.
I'm Gabb Schivone. I'll be reading from Army Boy, an investigative memoir about a journalist who revisits the demons of their past and emerges with a newly explored aspect of mass shootings in America and how best to prevent them. This excerpt is from the chapter entitled Sniper in a Spider's Nest. The sun was shining, not a cloud in sight. I inhaled slowly like I was breathing through a straw. At age 13, I was very good at some things: baseball, art, writing, and military-style hunter-killer operations. I shifted my weight, all 75 pounds, on my belly against the dirt and rocks and reeds below. I imagined myself iconically as Carlos Hathcock from my beloved book about his life. Marine sniper, 93 confirmed kills. I was out stalking the land like he did in a legendary war that occurred many years before I was born. The barrel of my rifle barely peeked out of the darkness of the bushes where I had built my nest. I lay still, trying to stay the beating of my own heart. You'd think that if your heart actually stopped, you'd die. But it is possible. You can stop your own heart by not regarding it, by making it so faint you forget it's even there. The object of my predatory desire lay 20 feet before me, perched on a fence post on the farthest end of my front yard. What's it like being watched by something that wants to kill you? You're still safe and breathing, but in a state of extreme existential danger, wholly unfelt and unseen. The bird, a white-winged mourning dove, had beautiful, beady black eyes, like two tiny 8-balls. It reminded me of an Edgar Allan Poe story that I couldn't quite name because it wasn't important. Calm focus is what was needed now. I sipped my breath, held it. Kaplock! The 177 caliber lead pellet, the size of a large gumball to the creature, tore through its flesh like the wrecking ball from a small cannon, ripping chunks of blood and gore out of its chest. For an eternal moment, the creature wobbled, its talons still clutching the top of the post as all its body weight quickly gave way beneath. It didn't flit or flutter. It didn't fly away. Instead, it fell stiffly, headlong over the side. In the dove's proportion to the world, the fence post was as high as a skyscraper. And so down, down, Down fell the dove to its rocky death. Its previously free-flying life was over in a violent instant. The leaves rustled like dead bells as I stepped out of my nest, pulling the veil of green camouflage netting from my head. I calmly walked up to the dying fowl, its beak opening and closing again and again, gasping its last breaths of life. And just as calmly as I walked over, I pulled out my sidearm from its shoulder holster and shot the dying creature through the eye. Feathers flew up as the hole stamped a path like a hole puncher right through its head. I then turned around and walked back inside my house, leaving the mutilated corpse to be consumed by cats and larger birds. Nobody would miss the dead creature, nor think I had done anything wrong. As the old saying goes, boys will be boys.
Hi, I'm Dr. Zelda Lockhart, author of the recent novel Trinity and 3 other novels, and author of The Soul of the Full-Length Manuscript, Turning Life's Wounds into the Gift of Literary Fiction, Memoir, or Poetry. It brings me so much joy to introduce my mentee, Sidney Logan Echevarria. I was so impressed with Sidney's desire to learn something new, the way she was willing to integrate her everyday life and all of who she is into the writing work. So the chapters of her novel would offer more than the smarts and craft of the author, but so that she would leave the life pattern of her thumbprint as legacy through the life of the historical characters for the readers whose lives will be impacted by her work. I hold the truth-telling and depth of human experience told to me through the stories of everyone I work with. The story is how I remember them when I see them a week later, 10 years later. Sidney's truth-telling through her characters, the births of their children, their joys and pains, are forever part of my life, and it will always be a joy of my life that I have been in authentic, creative community with her. I hope for more. And I know that all who bear witness to Sidney's stories will bear witness to their own lives. Y'all enjoy.
Hello, I'm Sidney Logan Echevarria, and I'm reading excerpts from my upcoming novel, Caroline. Those who were there on the cold, damp January morning when Caroline's ship slipped from her noose and flew away found it strange, although not altogether unimaginable, that the woman who had poisoned her baby for the arms of her lover was capable of such a feat. Most were close enough to see, but a few lingered just close enough to hear the wind rustle her skirts, a soft whoosh, and the light sigh that escaped her lips. The crowd gasped. Some might say she sucked the air right out of the day, but their disappointment was the real cause. The white folks were disappointed that the show they had anticipated and planned for did not conclude as expected. The hangman was disappointed that he'd come all this way and done all his preparing for nothing. The black folks were disappointed in the questions left unanswered. Nearly 1,000 people gathered their things and themselves and made their way back to their homes. As a crowd of black people walked toward to their community, bits of delight could be seen in some of their eyes. Though Caroline likely deserved some justice, none was sure the noose was right for her. She'd sat alone in her cell the night before. Everything was quiet, and she considered what her death day would be like. She laid on her back and rested her right hand on her lower belly. Before her Thomas ever lived outside of her body, that's how she held him. Before she was even certain he was there, she loved him, and wanted him from the moment he stirred in her womb. She was thinking of him then, wanting him and wanting things to be different. She was here, in this place due to wanting. Wanting is an interesting thing. It is the knotty roots of a tree with broad, gnarled branches that reach this way and that, following whim rather than a natural, straighter pattern of growth. It's a dangerous thing, too, often serving as a false shaman, guiding people down roads that lead not to fulfillment, but to regret. That's the shaman Caroline followed, and the road she walked, toward a man she believed was designed just for her, and here she was, waiting to die for killing the baby that she so loved. She shivered and turned on her side. Pulling the blanket up on her shoulder, she settled it in again. Her hand was no longer on her belly, and her thoughts were no longer of Thomas. She was thinking of the warmth that comes with being wanted, and tried to wrap herself into herself as she longed for it. In this in-between of dream and wakefulness, she saw Max smile. Her whole body warmed at the sight of him, despite the role he played in bringing her here, to this moment, to her last sleep before her last tomorrow. She sat in his gaze, his smile, and his scent. She remembered all of it, the memory of his fingers intertwined with hers, his thumb unconsciously rubbing the back of her hand, how she let her head drop toward his, knowing he'd meet her halfway, their foreheads resting against one another. How she could feel him looking at her, even when her back was turned. She tried to forget the disgust that flashed across his face when Thomas cried, when she'd asked him to hold the baby, just for a minute, while she checked the biscuits. She remembered hoping that even if he didn't love her baby right then, he'd figure out how to someday. On the day of the hanging, Ruth and May's mother did not know they had gone to the courthouse. The girls thought it was clever and most advantageous to offer to take Mrs. Guthrie, a sick and shut-in neighbor, what was left of last night's cornbread, and, defying explicit directions to the contrary, to circle back through town to see Miss Caroline hang. They struck out early, and when they arrived at her home, they delivered the cornbread, read a chapter of scriptures, and began their illicit walk toward the courthouse grounds. Although the sun shone brightly, the dirt road through their small town was wet and marshy. The damp dirt held onto their feet, as if the earth itself was trying to hold them back, delaying the girls just long enough to make them wonder if it too thought they should not be going. The world around them was filled with a pungent perfume, made up of the richness of the soil combined with the sourness from the crowd's perspiration dampening wool coats, finished with the cut onions that were tucked into heaps of egg salad, prepared just for the occasion. The sky was blue and the clouds were sparse. The coats worn were a precaution, and the warmth created by the thick crowd had not been considered. Ruth and May kept their heads down and moved quickly at the edges of the crowd, traveling up a hill where some classmates had gathered. From there, they could see the hanging tree, the large white oak. The grand old tree's lushness had been lost to the season, her branches stretching regally and authoritatively over the potter's field. There was no work for her today. Gallows had been built, and they shone bright and new against the green of the field. On this January day, the oak stood watching along with the rest of the crowd, as Miss Caroline rode in the back of the buckboard on top of her casket toward her gallows.
Hello, my name is Weike Wang, and I'm the author of Chemistry, Joan is Okay, and the forthcoming Rental House. It is with great honor and excitement that I introduce my fellowship mentee, Thao. Over the course of our mentorship, I've discovered that Ku and I share more than just a passion for writing. We both come from academic science backgrounds, and we both feel a deep responsibility to honor the communities and families from which we came. Ku's debut work is a memoir that offers a deep, introspective look into the complexities of his life. Most of his narrative focuses on the pressures of being the first in his Hmong refugee family to pursue a doctorate. Within these pages, Ku boldly explores the intersections of queerness, generational and historical trauma, and the ways in which spirits and ghosts thread through our lives and identities. The work is emotionally charged, dazzling, and sheds brilliant light on what it means to carry the weight of family legacy while trying to define your own path. Working with Ku has been an intense, thought-provoking, and deeply rewarding process. We've shared long, meaningful conversations about the art of storytelling, about who has the right to tell certain stories, and how to weave them in a way that is authentic, compelling, and honors the past while also looking toward the future. His voice is fresh, his perspective crucial, incisive, necessary, and I have no doubt that his memoir will leave a lasting impression on readers. It has been an absolute privilege to see Ku's journey unfold, and I am excited to continue witnessing his growth as both a writer and a storyteller.
Hello, my name is Thao. I'll be reading from my memoir titled Monsters Like Me. It tells the story of a queer Hmong shaman growing up in rural America who retraces the wounds of war on a quest to unlock the secret to healing generations of trauma, all while navigating identity, faith, and alcoholism. This excerpt is from a chapter titled Spiritual Waterboarding. It is the summer of 1999, and we party like it. I'm 15. Bu, my paternal grandmother, has just passed. All of the Thao clan and our brethren from across the country descend upon our Amish paradise for the 3-day funeral. At Hmong funerals, your house fills up with people like a tidal wave, packed in so tight that it feels like you're floating at the top of the ceiling with one last gulp of air before your head sinks under. People distract you. The women are so busy cooking and cooking for the next meal, then cleaning up after that meal that they forget to cry. The men stay up talking, drinking, eating, and preparing for the funeral and also forget to cry. A language barrier always stood in the way of my communication with Bu. I wonder if it was the only thing preventing us from having a relationship. Maria, she would urge, motioning towards me to play the VHS tape of The Sound of Music on her TV. Bu watched The Sound of Music every day. I never asked what she liked about it. I didn't know how to ask. Maybe watching The Sound of Music was her escape. Did she feel like Maria, watching them flee their country due to violent conflict? Was there freedom in watching Julie Andrews belt incredible vocals while twirling through the Swiss Alps? Did the mountains remind her of Laos? I'll never know. With Bu's passing, I'm sad, but I don't have time to be sad. I let the tidal wave take me here and there, not having to worry about my next step. My older cousins sneak my younger cousins and I hard cider. I hold the cool, dark brown glass bottle like a trophy and instantly feel infinitely cooler. I run a finger down the bottle's spine and watch a trickle of condensation follow my fingertip down to the thick base. I press the tight circular rim to my lips and try to act casual, as if I've done this hundreds of times. Brown liquid slips into my mouth, swirls around my tongue, and sloshes down my throat. I flash back to the beer Dad let me try when I was 8. This is definitely sweeter, though it has a slight bitter bite. I take another gulp. 2 gulps turn to 20 as I quickly down 2 bottles. Suddenly, the room begins to move. I feel a whizzing in my stomach and a lightness in my head. I'm laughing, but I don't know why. I think I'm buzzed, I slur to my older cousin. Man, I wish I could get drunk off 2 hard ciders. It takes me like 6, he cackles. We continue to absorb bittersweet liquid into our bodies, our blood, and our laughter. We soak it in. I feel good. I'm not sad anymore. I suddenly realize that when I have alcohol in my system, my sadness melts away. It washes away anger, loneliness, anything I don't want to feel. At 15, I fall in love. That summer we bury Grandma. The cousins come and go, but alcohol stays by my side. I like the feeling of being drunk. It feels like I'm flying. It makes everything funny, lighthearted, and simultaneously numb. Numb is exactly how I want to feel. Numb pauses the tapes that are incessantly playing in my head, the voices that say I'm not good enough, that say no one will love me if they know I like boys, that say I'm going to hell. I like numb. Thank you.
From In the Sense of Island, Noelani Pitters writes, as if to say abundance and loss were twins, separated at birth, reunited with differences pronounced. Noelani's writing is textured, rich, and deeply rooted in the consciousness, protection, and respect of her ancestors and community. I have felt so honored to have been chosen to join Noelani on her writing journey, and I know she will continue to write meaningful and amazing work.
Hi everyone, I'm Noelani Pitters, and I'll be reading 3 pieces from my poetry manuscript. Echo Stitch, of Hana and Libert Chong, great-grandparents. Here is what I know of them. A shared gravestone in dry grass, unsmiling statues seated in photos, surrounded by blood-red anthuriums, makers of so many children, busy hands that seemed quilts, grew orchids, split stringy mango and mountain apple, their end long before my beginning. If a mother is oceanic, if a father is Pacific, if there are only so many trees on an island, if the island sinks. And here is what I ask the ground above them. Who taught you the echo stitch, fabric rippling, one wave grasping for the next? Who taught you to make such perfect, perfect ghosts? My mother's fears, my beauties. The call of an endangered bird, peach-pitted, abandoned of blush. My mother with curled, bowl-cut bangs, pink gingham, barrette symmetry, and me. The anxiety of cells in another, the upright walking once wombed. Who moves, who leaves, who returns, and who does not, in so many words, a blossom end. The things we ask of each other, the things we do instead. Left hand turns in the dark, left to fate. Archipelagic. Of, relating to, or located in an archipelago, an expanse of water with many scattered islands, something resembling an archipelago, as if the thing and that which looks like it could bend the same. But what if something resembling an archipelago is not an archipelago, or questions its archipelagoness, a non-archipelago pelago? Pelagic, of, relating to, or living or occurring in the sea. But is to live to occur? And do some of us occur in more places than others? And if we occur in remnants, will our sea relations know us when they see us? Oceanic, as in birds, fish, sediment, the matter that settles to the bottom, the matter that is unresolved. I have found myself, again, in open water. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Crystal Hana Kim, and I'm happy to be here presenting the incredibly talented Espec. It's been a pleasure working with Espec throughout these past couple of months. She and I live near each other, so we've had the good fortune of meeting in person as well as online. Espec is kind, curious, compassionate, and that inquisitive outlook is evident in her writing, which manages to be both evocative and sharp. Espec explores parent-child relationships, story-making, and the ways which we are shaped by the ones we love with such specificity that I feel like I'm transported into the pages. She is such a genius when she's writing about music as well. I've been lucky enough to read a bit of Espec's novel, and it is an incredible examination of music, the pressures of capitalism, exploitation, and the beauty in art making. I can't wait for you to read it one day. Please give a warm welcome to Espec.
How We Lived by Espec. Just a lifeboat, my mother said of my father when I asked for a photo of him. I just wanted to look, to see if I could pick up features of this man whom I'd never seen, or had any memory of, and if it'd reveal pieces of who I was. Just a good-for-nothing lifeboat for me to hop on and get the hell out of there. Nothing you need to know about him except for that. There. My mother always spat that word out with a finality and force that ended conversations, refusing to name or explain where she was from. Even what little she spooled to me about her past would set off fits of yelling, of slamming, of smashing, from which it would take her a day or more to emerge. I thought, though, with my stepfather, she'd found an anchor. He was an insurance man with a solid past, one that he'd never run away from, and that stretched so far back he couldn't trace his lineage to an exact point, so that now he was a bit of everything. That's what my father was after. To be so mixed up with the land that there was no more definition to oneself, to just be. And yet, 2 months after she married him at City Hall, no wedding, just me to carry the reins, she had settled into her old rage again, shouting, there, like a bad word. Don't tell me how to behave, she shouted once, her anger rising up in pitch like a howl, starting low and ending with emphasis on the last 2 words. Over there, dignity will always send you into the ditch faster. Why'd you marry me then? He had retorted. His voice had grown soft, and he sounded wounded. It was as if, when they fought, they spoke another dialect, with meaning pushed below the surface of everything. I thought they were always fighting about her temper, how quickly it would rise, and how easy it was to set off. But that day, I sensed it was something more. They had her boss and his wife over for dinner, and Richard called him a jerk afterward. Smug, he said, adding that my mother was like another person at dinner, obsequious, fawning. My mother retorted to Rich, you have your head in your ass and don't know how people work, how everyone, when push came to shove, were self-centered bastards looking out for only themselves. When my mother first met Richard, she was serving as a secretary at the local TV news station, hoping to rise up to news presenter someday, but she was still stuck writing scripts. She'd make a good anchor, was told she had a pretty face, and I'd seen so in an old black and white photo of her in her school years. She had just graduated college, and she wore a black cap and gown, her face angular in the right places, the chin, the jaw, the nose, softened by just enough fat. Though she picked on herself. My calves, see here, they're a little thick. But she did it with a shade of pride, as if there wasn't much to pick on, really. Evie, you better watch out you don't walk on your toes too much, or flex them when you reach for something. You're getting close to that age. Your calves will want to grow, and if you're not careful like I was, you're going to get big, thick eggplants for legs. My mother never revealed her teeth in photos. She kept her lips tight and with the corners tilted up, just enough so it wasn't a frown, just enough so you could tell they weren't relaxed. In that one photo that she showed me, she stood alone, and when I asked, who took the photo, she had looked hard at the image, then said, she's dead anyway.
I'm so delighted to introduce Nami, and I am so honored to have worked with her this autumn. Nami's promise proves the adage that mentees teach their mentors too, imparting as much as they attain. Before our second meeting, as I was reading Nami's manuscript, I experienced an acute sense of panic as I realized I had no real criticisms to make of the work before me. Her memoir in progress, See You Somewhere, has many threads to tie before completion, but its author's unvarnished instincts are at this moment exactly right. Her work is precise and compelling, even and especially in its chaotic improvisation. When do we, as readers and writers, trust the craftsperson of a piece? I trust the writer who knows exactly what she wants to say, who says it. Most of all, I trust the writer who takes creative risks without hesitation, particularly the kind of risk that stuns and stirs me in a state of surprise. I knew that Nami was such a writer within the very first paragraph of the very first excerpt I read. I want to mention strangeness, the rare, unrelenting, irrepressible, ambushing strangeness of a writer whose work reflects a singular way of pressing forth on the page. Her nonfiction project is energetically poetry, the facility with which she embodies hybridity and blurs genre matches her mastery communicating across cultures. Unbound by borders of modern English or monolingualism, Nami can write anything. Exquisitely addressing the materia of language itself, her superpowers speak to why we speak at all. Her writing refuses to accept that there lives anything that can be seen or felt but not written. It contracts the distances between all the people in this world. Again, I'm so excited to introduce Nami, and I know you will love her work as much as I do. Thank you.
안녕하세요. My name is Nami, and I'm calling in from Tlingit Land, Juneau, Alaska. Thank you so much to Penn, and to my amazing mentor, Mary Alice Daniel, and to everyone who walks beside me on and off the page. I'll be reading tonight from my memoir in progress, titled See You Somewhere. Although my case is a closed adoption, when I was 6, my family received a letter from Holt International saying my birth mother comes by often and wants to know how I'm doing. They said my family is not required to respond, but if they'd be willing, she would really like to hear from them. My family sent letters and photos in 1991 and 1992. My parents wrote that I enjoy writing, singing songs, and drawing pictures, that I say one day I'm going to be an artist, that I wanted to learn to ride a bike and did not give up, that I love to go fishing with my dad. They never again heard from my birth mother. In college, someone smashed the window of my car and took everything, including a binder of my agency documents and copies of the letters. Not even locks can keep some things closed. I felt like someone I loved had died. Wailing, I called my dad. My dad loved me, and so he promptly emailed every adoptee agency and adoptee organization he could find in Korea. Could anyone please help my daughter recover these documents? And Pia, she is coming to Korea this summer. Is there any chance she could find her birth mother? His emails worked. Holt International sent us copies of everything. Everything included new documents I'd never seen before, but it did not include everything from the original binder. Notably, it did not include the letters my family sent. And they found my birth mother. Finding my birth mother was made possible because of a man named Mr. Yoon. Mr. Yoon knew my birth mother because she had come for counseling every year since I was relinquished. And so, Mr. Yoon called my Oma, and she answered because she is a real person and not a character, and is a woman and not a ghost, and she has hands and not just poems, and she owns things like a telephone. And it rang. Unfortunately, he said, she does not want to meet you. Gutted, I promptly got drunk with a fellow adoptee who always texted back, and a few months later I flew to Korea to find myself, study the Korean language on a scholarship. I handwrote my mother a letter entirely in Hangul. It looked like a child wrote it, which was because a child wrote it. I said in America there is a story about a bird whose mom momentarily flies away, and so it hatches alone. It walks around asking a dog and a cow, even yelling at an airplane, "Are you my mother?" I want to ask every woman in the subway if they are my mother, I wrote. I asked her if we could meet, even in secret. The reunion is a much bigger story. What you need to know is that my Oma is tender and indomitable. When my son and I traveled back to Korea in 2022, we were sent to a government quarantine facility, unable to prove we were Korean or had Korean family. 3 days later, my Oma negotiated our release. How did you do it? I begged Oma to know, aware we could not have met the requirements. Oma submitted old documents, she said with her translation app. What documents? I asked. She showed them the letters my family sent when I was 6. She showed them the letter I wrote about a baby bird. She showed them every single photo of me she owns. She told them I was beautiful. She told them I was her daughter. She said this was enough. Can I have a copy of these documents? I asked, reuniting with the old letters, with the girl who lived, me. I haven't seen them for a long time. My Oma nods and she moves us closer. Closer to the woman who keeps things. Closer to the girl who was kept. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shonda Buchanan. How's everyone doing? I hope you're doing well. So I'm the author of the family memoir Black Indian, and I am so grateful to be able to introduce Tzynya Pinchback and her amazing collection of poems and essays. This writer's stories transcend the normal generational mother-daughter story with the plot twist of cancer and mental health. And yes, there's some elements of racism. So writing in the vein of Lucille Clifton's The Terrible Stories and Audre Lorde's The Cancer Journals, Pinchback's work will show us how these narratives are both hugely personal, intersectional, and significant questions for everyone, particularly surrounding that sense of self-worth and longing, while at the same time being highly political in the kind of care that women receive for our physical and mental health in this society. Someone once told me that the highest compliment you can give a book is to say, "I wish I was writing this book myself." So I am giving this compliment to you, Tzynya. I wish I was writing your book myself because it is an incredible story. Thank you, and please welcome Tzynya Pinchback to the mic.
Hi, I'm Tzynya Pinchback, and the title of my poem is We End in Triumph. The day Big Creek swells its banks, we run for high ground. Pass the time crowded around a paint-splattered table in a third-floor attic, learning the basics of needlecraft. Like this, I say, posing your thumb and forefinger. You are prowess and preen, eager fingers that trap a note in the high position, roll below its pitch and back, send narrow vibrato spiraling out from the neck of a fiddle, but cannot tighten a simple crochet stitch. In weeks you are 15. Ascend to first chair of the school orchestra, mimic with deft the fast, slow, fast progressions of Bach's concerto for 2 violins in D minor. But today, a 6-inch strand of gold yarn, pinched and pulled into an ill-formed slipknot, is your undoing. Like this, I say, placing my wrist on your wrist as guide. You are effort and ache, eyes squinting, mouth pulled into a thin line. In weeks you are metal braces, an acquired lisp, unlearning the habit of tongue thrust and teeth grinding. But today, the crystal-studded butterflies clipped to your ears bounce, ready their wings for flight with each clench of your jaw. Not one chain stitch mastered. The metal hook water in your hands, you toss it hard into a basket of notions center table. Fits of rain pummel the roof. The dank room blinking into darkness with each ring of thunder as if conjured by your rage. Ha! I chuckle. You stare at me, eyes wide and fixed, and I repeat, ha ha ha. The sharp angles of your face soften, and you laugh too. Others look up from their handiwork and we fall silent, still ourselves against the dam in us breaking, tears pool in our eyes, lips tight as if sewn shut, hang our heads slumping until it escapes us. The first laugh in 3 years. 3 years since you called the devil by name and we became bandits. Freedom from your father's fingerprints, our only loot. We stand, make our way to the back of the room, spinning to the displayed bric-a-brac, bolts of bright-colored fabric best for piecing together quilts, are wearing streams of color. I pull you to me, skin to skin, twisting and twirling and stumbling down a flight of old wooden stairs, a waltz of woman and girl, of mother and daughter. We dance out the door, around the sidewalk, leaping puddles, baby frogs, and downed tree limbs. Highway 9 a few miles away washes out. A parade of mud and red-bodied snakes march the city cobblestone streets in search of flower beds and basements. And carried on the back of our own glee, we are swept into the torrents of rain, our feet no longer touching the ground.
I'm Brenda Peinado, the author of The Rock Eaters and Time's Agent. It has been my honor to serve as a mentor for Grace Lee for the PEN America Emerging Voices Fellowship. Grace has already demonstrated the kind of talent and dedication that mark her as a writer to watch. In our conversations about the craft of writing, I've been consistently impressed by her work ethic, her drive, her commitment to revision, and her deep understanding of what it takes to build a writing life. What sets Grace's work apart is her masterful blend of the magical and the mundane. Her stories often feature enchanting conceits that illuminate truths about human nature and relationships. In one tale, a girl transforms into a mermaid after recovering from an accident, a magical metamorphosis that becomes a lens through which to examine the relationship between her mother and herself. In another, a once beautiful man, catfished via text message, retreats into what he knows is a fake relationship, rather than risk love, and the surreality of his life takes on a magical quality. These magical elements and genre bending are not mere whimsy. They serve as powerful metaphors, allowing Grace to explore themes of identity, healing, and sometimes the perplexing nature of human connection with remarkable sensitivity. It has been such a pleasure to work with Grace over these months, and her kindness and thoughtfulness applied to the page allow her characters to sing with emotion and feel truly alive. I have no doubt it's only a matter of time before we see a collection of her short stories on bookshelves. But today, we have the privilege of hearing her words straight from the source.
Hi everyone, my name is Gracie Lee and I'm a fiction writer from California, and today I'm going to be reading you an excerpt from my short story, The Perpetual TV. Thank you so much for listening. There was a summer I spent in China when it was so hot and humid and heavy that I knew if I sucked in my cheeks and tried really hard, I could grow gills and swim through the air. That was the summer I learned my parents' names for the first time, and that was the summer before my aunt installed AC in my dead grandfather's apartment. So every day I would wake up in a pool of my own sweat, and every day I'd wash it off in the shower next to a large jade green-blue cracked granite basin with 2 live fish, dark and inky like a cold night, circling each other in a quiet chase. My grandmother kept promising to kill, skin, and fry them, so she would finally have a well to wash her feet in, but she never did. I'm not sure it would have made much of a difference anyway. The water on my skin never fully dried after these redundant showers, so I'd roll around in my bed, dampening the already damp sheets with my arms and legs. And the next morning, every day, my grandmother would call my name in her half-sung way, Angela, and I'd wake up with bruises denting my fresh skin because the bed wasn't really a bed, just wooden planks with 2 layers of sheets pulled over them, as if that would make the makeshift mattress any softer. My mother and I stayed there for 2 months. That was as long as her travel visas would allow, and a little bit longer than my father would have liked, as he was still in California looking for a new job, managing my mother and me meandering around in the open streets of their shared hometown. In reality, we spent our days spinning around Wuhan in taxis stained with the rank smell of cigarettes, running errands for my grandmother who had misplaced the deed to my dead grandfather's, her dead husband's, apartment, and needed a replacement to finally sell the home and use the money to live out the rest of her life. It was a lot trickier than any of us had anticipated, as apparently the fate of my grandmother's retirement rested in the hands of neat-collared officials in matching sky blue button-downs, all of whom needed paper evidence to prove that my grandmother was married to my Weike, and that she was, in fact, very much in love with him, as if the proof couldn't come from my mother and me, the living-in-the-flesh testaments to their marriage. So every day we ran around the city to gather signatures for our petition, bouncing from this distant relative to that distant relative, all of whom claimed that they were ecstatic at the news of my birth 8 years ago, that they burst into tears at the thought of their own blood blooming in a foreign country thousands of miles away. I couldn't even imagine my own cries as a wet, wrinkly infant, let alone theirs, people whom I had never seen before we showed up on their doorstep and asked them to testify. Every time we did this, I begged my mother to stop. I cursed my relatives who insisted on bringing us in for pots of hot tea that soured even after the leaves were strained from them. I cursed my grandmother for forgetting what the deed was while remembering every mahjong moot ever existed. I cursed my grandfather for dying in the first place, which was easy for me to do because I had never really truly met the man who brought my mother to tears whenever his memory was mentioned. He died when I was 3, too young to remember anything real. I cursed all of them in my head because I wasn't allowed to swear, and then I immediately took it back because it was really such an ugly, ugly thing to think and feel, especially because my grandmother was always doing beautiful things for me and my mother. In the mornings, even though she could walk no more than 100 feet before her knees started to hurt, my waipo would still go down 5 flights of stairs, turn the corner, walk another 3 blocks, take a left, and walk another 2 blocks to buy us bowls of silky sweet tofu soaked in ginger syrup. Then she walked the 2 blocks back, make a right, walk another 3 blocks, turn the corner, and climb 5 flights of stairs while taking breaks in between. It took her at least an hour to do this, or maybe even longer since I was always asleep when she left. When she came back, the tofu hua would still be hot. I imagined my grandmother, whose skin was normally so cold, must have been radiating heat from the 5 flights of stairs, the 5-block walk, and the whole thing again. All the former strength and sunlight and sweat of her farming childhood returning to her body just so she could get us breakfast and keep it warm. My wife would then call for us, and she called for me, Angela, and I loved the way she said my name, making it sound far more pretty than I deserved. Thank you so much for listening.
That concludes our evening. Thank you all for joining us, and congratulations again to tonight's readers. The 2025 Emerging Voices Fellowship application period will open on January 1st. Subscribe to PEN America's newsletter and follow us on social media for updates and more information. Until then, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you soon.